The certified check for $10,247.83 trembled in Patricia Waverly's manicured hands as she stared at the itemized invoice that would bankrupt the HOA she'd ruled like a tyrant for 6 years. "This is extortion," she whispered, her voice cracking, like her perfectly applied makeup under the harsh fluorescent lights of the community center. "No, Patricia," I said, leaning back in my chair with the satisfaction of a man who just won the lottery. "This is what happens when you illegally tow someone's truck and then lie about it under oath." The entire HOA board looked like they'd collectively swallowed broken glass. Attorney Mitchell cleared his throat and adjusted his tie, clearly uncomfortable with what he was about to say. "Mrs. Waverly, the arbitrator has ruled that your actions constitute gross negligence and abuse of authority. The association is liable for punitive damages, storage fees, and Mr. Rodriguez's attorney costs." Patricia's face went from porcelain white to tomato red. "But diesel trucks are illegal in residential areas. I looked it up." "You looked it up wrong," I said, pulling out my phone. "Would you like me to show you the actual city ordinance again? The one that proves you've been making up rules for years?" The room fell silent except for the sound of Patricia's world crumbling in real time. But let me back up for months, to when this whole beautiful disaster began with a simple misunderstanding about what constitutes illegal parking. I just moved to Whispering Pines, a suburban development where the houses were beige, the lawns were mandatory, and the HOA president treated property management like she was running the Pentagon. My crime: owning a 2019 Ford F-250 Super Duty diesel pickup truck. Patricia Waverly was the kind of woman who'd weaponized middle management skills into neighborhood terrorism. Picture someone who turned Karen stereotypes into an art form: shoulder length, blonde hair that hadn't moved since 1995, power suits from the clearance rack, and the cold, dead eyes of someone who'd found her calling in making others miserable. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning. I was loading my truck for work when Patricia materialized from her house like a suburban vampire emerging from her coffin. "Excuse me," she called out, clipboard already in hand. "Are you aware that commercial vehicles aren't allowed in residential driveways?" I paused, toolbox in hand. "It's not a commercial vehicle. It's my personal truck. It's a diesel truck." "Diesel trucks are commercial vehicles. Says who?" Patricia's smile could have frozen and a phrase. "Says the HOA covenant. Section 4.7 clearly states that commercial vehicles are prohibited." "Can I see that section?" "It's in your welcome packet." "I never got a welcome packet." "Then you should contact the HOA office." "You mean you?" "I mean the proper channels." Patricia had perfected the art of circular logic. Talking to her was like debating with a GPS that only knew one route: her way. But I figured it was a simple misunderstanding. I'd show her the truck's registration, prove it was personal use, and we'd all move on with our lives. That was my first mistake. Over the next few weeks, Patricia's obsession with my truck escalated, from casual harassment to full-blown crusade. She'd walk by my driveway multiple times per day, taking pictures of my truck from every angle like she was documenting a crime scene. "Still parking that commercial vehicle illegally," she'd mutter loud enough for me to hear. "Still not a commercial vehicle," I'd reply from my porch. "Diesel engines are inherently commercial. My neighbor has a diesel Mercedes. Is that commercial too?" "That's different." "How?" "It just is." Patricia's logic was like a house of cards built during an earthquake, impressive in its instability and destined to collapse spectacularly. But she wasn't just wrong. She was aggressively, confidently wrong. The worst kind of wrong, the harassment, escalated when Patricia started leaving notes on my windshield. Typed, laminated notes that read like legal documents, written by someone who'd learned law from watching Judge Judy. "Notice of violation. Your diesel truck violates HOA covenant. 4.7 regarding commercial vehicles. Remove immediately or face fines and towing." I read the actual HOA covenant. Section 4.7 prohibited commercial vehicles used for business purposes. My truck was registered as a personal vehicle and used for personal transportation. By any reasonable interpretation, it was perfectly legal, but Patricia wasn't interested in reasonable interpretations. The diesel engine makes it commercial, she insisted during one particularly memorable confrontation. Diesel is for work trucks. Patricia, half the luxury cars in Europe are diesel. We're not in Europe. No, we're in America, where adults can drive whatever legal vehicle they want. Not in this neighborhood. Patricia had appointed herself as the Supreme Court of suburban transportation, and she'd already reached her verdict. But here's the thing about Patricia. She was so convinced of her own authority that she'd forgotten to do basic research. While she was busy taking pictures of my truck and writing violation notices, I was busy documenting her harassment and researching the actual laws. Turns out, there's no city, county, or state ordinance that classifies diesel trucks as commercial vehicles based solely on engine type. Patricia was making it up, but I decided to let her dig her own grave. The final confrontation came on a Thursday morning in September. I was heading to work when I noticed my truck was gone. In its place was a towing notice and a gleeful Patricia standing in her front yard like she'd just won the lottery. Problem solved, she called out smugly. Patricia, where's my truck? Towed for HOA violations. Maybe next time you'll follow the rules. I read the towing notice. It says here the truck was towed for illegal diesel vehicle in residential area. That's right, Patricia, that's not a real violation. It is according to City Ordinance 15.7. I pulled out my phone and Googled the ordinance. Patricia, Ordinance 15.2. 7 is about noise restrictions during construction. Her smile faltered. Well, there's another ordinance. What ordinance? The diesel ordinance. Show me. I don't have to show you anything. That's when I knew Patricia had crossed the line from harassment to fraud. I called the towing company immediately. The conversation was enlightening. We towed your truck based on an HOA request, the dispatcher said. They claimed it was illegally parked. What law did they cite? Let me check. They said it was a city ordinance about diesel trucks in residential areas. There's no such ordinance. Sir, we're required to verify violations before towing. Then you didn't verify this one. Silence. We'll need to speak with our supervisor. The towing company was as confused as I was. They towed my truck based on Patricia's false claim about a non-existent city ordinance. But the damage was done. My truck was in impound. I was facing storage fees. And Patricia was probably celebrating with champagne. That's when I decided to fight back. My lawyer was fascinated by Patricia's creative interpretation of the law. She had your truck towed based on a fictional ordinance. She's been harassing me for months about imaginary rules, and you have documentation. I handed him a folder thick enough to choke a horse. Every conversation, every note, every violation notice. Plus recordings of her admitting she made up the diesel rule. This is textbook harassment. And the wrongful towing could be considered theft. What are my options? Sue them into the stone. Age. The lawsuit was filed on a Friday. Patricia received the papers on Monday. By Tuesday, she was calling me directly. This is ridiculous, she shrieked. I was protecting property values by making up laws. Diesel trucks are commercial vehicles. Patricia, I have 3 different legal opinions that say you're wrong. Those lawyers don't understand HOA law. HOA law doesn't supersede actual law. Silence. Patricia, you had my truck illegally towed based on a rule you invented. That's theft. I was following proper procedure. What procedure? The one where you make up city ordinances. Patricia's defense strategy was simple. Double down on the lie and hope everyone was too stupid to fact-check her. The HOA emergency meeting was called for the following week. Patricia had clearly been working the phones because half the board looked like they'd been personally audited by the IRS. This is all a misunderstanding, Patricia announced to the packed room. Mr. Rodriguez was clearly violating established regulations. What regulations? Asked board member Johnson, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The city ordinance about diesel vehicles. Patricia, I said, standing up with my laptop, there is no city ordinance about diesel vehicles in residential areas. Of course there is. Then show us. Patricia's face went red. I don't have to prove anything to you. Actually, said my lawyer, also standing. You do. This is a legal proceeding now. That's when I played my trump card. Your Honor, I said, addressing the mediator, I have here a certified letter from the city attorney's office confirming that no such ordinance exists. I handed the letter to the mediator, who read it aloud. The city of Riverside confirms that there are no ordinances prohibiting diesel vehicles in residential areas based solely on engine type. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. Furthermore, I continued, I have recordings of Mrs. Waverly admitting she researched this ordinance herself and interpreted it to apply to my truck. That's taken out of context, Patricia stammered. Is it? I pulled out my phone and played the recording. Of course, diesel trucks are commercial. I looked it up myself. The city ordinance clearly states that diesel engines are for work vehicles only. The room fell silent except for the sound of Patricia's credibility evaporating. There is no such ordinance, the mediator said slowly. Mrs. Waverly, did you have this vehicle towed based on a rule you believed existed or one you knew existed? I thought. The diesel rule seemed obvious. So, you made it up. I interpreted existing regulations. Which regulations? The commercial vehicle regulations, which don't apply to personal diesel trucks. Patricia's defense strategy crumbled faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami. The arbitrator's ruling was swift and brutal. The HOA was liable for wrongful towing, harassment, and punitive damages. The total came to $10,247.83, enough to drain the HOA's entire reserve fund. But the sweetest justice came when Patricia tried to blame the board for not stopping her. I was acting in good faith. She protested. Good faith based on imaginary laws. The arbitrator replied, the board has grounds to pursue personal liability against you for exceeding your authority. Patricia's face went white as she realized she wasn't just losing her position, she was potentially facing personal bankruptcy. The emergency vote to remove Patricia was unanimous. The new HOA president's first act was to send me a formal apology and a fruit basket. Patricia's second act of revenge. She tried to sue me for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Her lawyer dropped the case after reviewing the evidence. Turns out, accurately describing someone's actions in defamation, it's called telling the truth. Patricia moved out of Whispering Pines 2 months later, citing neighbor harassment, which was rich, considering she'd been harassing neighbors for years. The new HOA president sent me another fruit basket and removed all of Patricia's imaginary rules from the books. My truck now sits peacefully in my driveway, diesel engine and all. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting someone's stupidity speak for itself. Patricia learned that the hard way, along with the expensive lesson that you can't tow someone's truck based on laws you invented in your head. The $10,000 settlement was nice, but the real satisfaction came from watching Patricia's reign of suburban terror end with a whimper and a certified check. Some people need to learn that authority without knowledge is just stupidity with a clipboard. Patricia learned that lesson the hard way, in front of the entire neighborhood, with an empty bank account as proof. My truck is still there. Patricia's credibility isn't. Sometimes the best revenge is just proving you were right all along and getting paid for it.